should be able to get through it fairly quickly. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about a few of the new publishers that we took on, and I mentioned some of these in the, I guess it was February session we had. We picked up a half dozen pubs last summer. So the first one I'm just going to mention a few books from. It's from Berlin, which is a company based in Edinburgh, and it's got lots of products about all things Scottish. So the first one here that I'm talking about is Putting the Tea in Britain. And I guess, you know, the major theme of this book is everybody understands that tea is a big important drink in the UK and in England in particular. But one thing I didn't understand is that, of course, being a Scottish-based publisher, they're going to publish a book that explains how the Scots brought the national drink to England. And there's some interesting themes that kind of parallel what's going on today. And as is explained in the preface of the book, the tea trade was one of the great engines that drove the globalization of the world economy. It's titled by a gentleman by the name of Les Wilson. He had a previous book called The Downed and the Saved that was the winner of a Saltire Society History Book of the Year award. So that book, that's out, just came out about 2 weeks ago. It's $28.99, less $44. All these books, all the Berlin products, the shipping is covered. The discount's $44, and so $28.99 less $44. That's $16.23. The next one here is another Berlin product. I thought that it kind of touched on some feminism themes. It's called The Pirate Queen. And it tells the story of the life of Grace O'Malley, who was a 15th century pirate, not pilot. And she, sorry, I've got a ringer here that I'd like to take care of. She was a pirate of some repute. She had 6 pirate cruisers, I guess, and she was operating in the high seas in the late 1500s until her arrest. And for some reason, she was saved from hanging by the Queen of the day, which was a Queen Elizabeth, and she became an important part of the Queen's court. So an interesting book, I thought. It's coming out in July, $18.99 less $44, shipping covered. It's $10.63 will be the cost for you folks. And the other thing I was going to mention quickly is the book. Grace O'Malley's life is subject of an upcoming Netflix series entitled Grace O'Malley, the Sea Queen. Okay, next I'm going to move on to a book just briefly. This is from a small company that we took on, and it is Milner and Associates. I think it's kind of interesting. It's for investors, do-it-yourself investors. And the interesting thing about what's happened in the world, besides a pandemic, is the market's gone way up, and a lot of people might be looking to rebalance portfolios. So this talks about that. What are you going to do with money when everything's priced so high? And where are you going to go to look for new yield and new opportunities? And this just talks about the simple concept of using index funds or ETFs that still charge a little tiny bit of a management expense ratio or a fee, but they're professionally managed, but they're a lot more economical than going with a full service mutual fund. So that it's authored by Dan Bortolotti. He's a certified financial planner from Toronto. It's coming out in the fall in November, and it's $26.95 less $44. Freight covered, $15.09 to you guys. The next publisher, we're leaving. That was the only one from Milner. We're done with Berlin. Now, by the way, just so I mention and make sure I remind myself about this, there are catalogs on Book Manager for all these publishers. So Berlin, there's one that details currently all the front lists that we're going to be carrying. or that we'll be releasing between now and the end of the year. There's also some links on our web pages or on our website on lb.ca that details those as well, but they're all up on Book Manager. So that would be Berlin. This is Cardinal Publishers Group. They've got their own books, and they also do a few distribution lines. So the first one I'm just going to mention briefly is 3-on-3 basketball. I don't know if people are aware of this, but the Raptors, along with Rogers, sponsors a 3-on-3 tournament that sets up in select cities across Canada. So I think they've done Halifax, Montreal, Toronto, some of the big cities out west. And they sponsor 3-on-3. 3-on-3 has been around for quite a while, but now it's actually going to be, if the Olympics go off this year, it was going to be profiled as an Olympic sport this year. So, the court dimensions are a little different. I don't know if you're aware of this. If you're not, I'll let you know that, there's a 24-second shot clock, which means that the players have 24 seconds to take a shot in most basketball. And in this game, it's a little different. The court's smaller. You got a 12-second shot clock. So interesting game, very fast-paced. And it's a book that profiles that. Some strategies and whatnot around 3-on-3. It's 30-50 less 44, 17-80 to your as a cost, and it's coming out at the end of this month. The next one I'm going to mention is being authored by the gentleman that Andrew Stoner, and he authored a book called Betty White, the First 90 Years, and she's still around. So now he's putting out another one called Betty White, the First 100 Years. And this one is coming out. It's coming out in early 2022, very early in January. It's 1750 less 44, so that would be 980 to you. Betty White, believe it or not, has been around before Lucille Ball and her sitcom series. It was called Life with Elizabeth. That show ended its original run in the mid-50s. And as most of us know, she went on and appeared in many game shows and some movies and some TV series as well. So I think that's a trade biography, autobiography, and that's coming out in early January of 2022. Next one, another story about James Naismith and how the game of basketball came to be. And most of us probably understand that James Naismith was a Canadian. He went down and worked in Massachusetts in the latter part of the 19th century. And he was charged with finding to create an indoor game that could be played during the winters. And he came up with basketball. The interesting thing about this title, I believe, is that it's written by a sportscaster, a basketball sportscaster, go figure. That's Brian Haney. And he befriended, through the game, through his connections in the game, he befriended James Naismith's grandson. His grandson started talking about how there's a lot of the story that hasn't really been divulged to the world at large. And so this book is created for that purpose, and it's publishing in September of 2021. $23.95 less 44, freight covered. That's $13.41 to you folks. Now these books, the next 4 or 5 I'll talk about here, or the next couple anyway, are from a company that is a distribution line from Cardinal. They're available through us. It's called Buttercup Publishing. So it's a series of kids' books. And, there's one here about the moon. They also have one on the Earth. These are all priced quite well. Well, actually, the moon and the Earth book are $17.50 less 44. So that'd be $9.80 to you folks. And then there's these Lift the Flap books. There's quite a series of those. Those are at $11.95 less 44 for $6.89. Now he's got Lift the Flap Farm, Lift the Flap Sea, Lift the Flap Jungle. There's all kinds of different ones. Lift the Flap Garden. So Buttercup Publishing, available from us. Most of these are starting to come out in August, September, and through October. And that one right there, Lift the Flap, as you can see, it's October 1st. Board books as well. Most of you probably understand that, having been in this business for a while. Okay, so that's Berlin, Milner, and Cardinal. I'm going to move into Bloomsbury. Now, Bloomsbury, the discount's 42 on this, and you will have to pay freight if you order any of these. So I just thought I'd make sure I'm being very transparent here on what that looks like. I talked a little bit about this series. They have, there's 3 series I'm going to outline briefly. This one's called the Object Lessons series. Object Lessons is an essay and book series about the hidden lives of ordinary things. Each of the essays in the books investigate a single object through a variety of approaches that often reveal something unexpected about that object. So literary criticism, theory, philosophy, phenomenology, popular culture, that's the kind of areas that this covers off. This book, it's about spacecraft. There's another one about football. I presented one I know in February on blackface. You know, I remember I did read most of that book, and what it talks about is the origins of where this came from. But it also talks about the strange phenomenon in society as to why a lot of Black people aren't running around wearing whiteface. So interesting topics, and an examination therein of each object, as it were. Okay, the next series is 33 1/3, and I just highlighted a few here. Like the objects 33 1/3, they're also alternate formatted. They're about 6 3/4 inches tall, 4 3/4 inches wide. Most of them are between 120 and 180 pages. This one here that I'm that's up on the screen right now is profiling an album. Each one of these books in 33 1/3 series talks about the inspiration and the production and popular reception of all these recordings. Janelle Monáe, she's an interesting, very talented person in the US. She recently appeared in Welcome to Marwin. And she was in Hidden Figures about, there was a movie about 3 Black women who played prominent roles in the 50s and 60s at NASA. She went on, so anyway, Janelle Monáe's character in Hidden Figures went on to become one of the first female engineers at NASA. She was originally, had started out as a musician, and this book here, 33 1/3, talks about the Arch Android, which is a book about an artificial intelligence entity that falls in love with a person. So it's kind of science fiction theme that we've heard of before, and some of you that have followed this genre might know that it sounds a little bit like the Blade Runner with Harrison Ford, and the follow-up movie as well that delves into human interactions with artificial intelligence, which we're starting to have more and more of every day. This one's coming out in September, and this book is, I believe, 1995 less 42, so there'll be 1157 to you folks. There's also another one here, Sam Cooke's Live at the Harlem Square Club from 1963, a very, very influential live recording that stands alongside Otis Redding's and James Brown's Live at the Apollo. And John Prine's John Prine. So some more of these books. I think there's 110 of these books now in the series, so there's quite a few of them out there. The next one I was just going to briefly mention is the British Film Institute classics. The one example I pulled up here is The Silence of the Lambs. It's done by a woman by the name of Yvonne Tasker. There's recently released products in the BFI classics on The Matrix and The Terminator. It just came out in May. And this one, The Silence of the Lambs, Yvonne Tasker, it's kind of an interesting what she does. She identifies the film as a key genre reference point for tracking late 20th century interests in police procedural profiling, serial murder, and analyzing its key themes for reason and madness, identity and belonging, aspiration and transformation. So it just talks about the development of policing and how they've begun to use more science. And the laboratory comes into play here. There's DNA mapping and all that kind of thing that's helping law enforcement officials track down criminals. And in this case, as most of us know, this was a serial killer. There's also books coming out on train spotting, The Thing, later this year. So I just pulled these up as well. Once again, I think I mentioned earlier, fairly good price at $20.95 less 42, so $12.20 cost to you guys. You have to pay freight though. I'm moving into IB Taurus now. This is still in Bloomsbury, so 42 off. This is a book about how to lose the information war. The author is a woman named Nina Jankowicz. She's a fellow at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars. She spent time in Russia, so she's got some good contacts and experience with the Kremlin. And so she's just talking about in this book what's going on with Russia and the kinds of things they're doing in the dark web, as it were. And we've got some recent big kinds of occurrences in our society and in the media. The biggest one that I can think of right offhand is the recent shutdown of the Colonial Pipeline system in the United States. That was a ransomware situation. So she's delves into these kinds of issues quite a bit, and also talks about fake war and the futures of conflicts. Maybe we won't be needing big airplanes and bombers anymore. It'll all be done on the internet. So that book is coming out in late September, and it is $23.95 less 42, so that'll cost you just under $14 per copy. There's a couple of Putin books here from IB Taurus. One talks about Vladimir's little adventures into Syria. That's coming out in November. There's another one here called Strong Man and the Struggle for Russia. So this one's done by a former BBC correspondent, Angus Roxburgh, who spent a lot of time in Russia, and like Nina before him, has a lot of contacts in the Kremlin and some good insights to provide us with. So the Strong Man's coming out in October. That's $26.50 less 42, and Putin's war with Syria, or in Syria, November of 2021. That's a little pricier at $35.50 less 42. There's also this guy here, China's World, the foreign policy of the world's newest superpower, and just talks about the ascendance of China as an economic and potentially military superpower. This one's $23.95 less 42, and it's also coming out in November. So now I'm out of IB Taurus, and I'm going to jump into Imagination. This is the one that most people likely understand is one of our biggest and most popular trade lines. So each one of these books is crafted by normally professionals or folks in the field that have experience dealing with a particular mental health issue that is prominent and focused on how children deal with these issues. So we describe them as mental health self-help books for children. Each book is written to help parents, siblings, and related professionals deal with youth issues in mental health. So the first one here, Home. Clearly, it's about homelessness and poverty, and so it talks about how two children lose their home with their parents and bounce around from place to place, and they finally come up with a place to call home. for a while. This will be released in early 2022. There's also The Brilliant Bee here. This is about the themes and the issues talked about or discussed in this book are learning disabilities. So this one here talks about Brilliant Bee, who carries with her an empowering story that demonstrates a learning difference like dyslexia doesn't define who you are. And despite her troubles with reading and writing, Beatrice is a natural and brilliant storyteller. So there's always a little bit of silver in the cloud. And so this book, Brilliant Bee, talks about some of the issues that children might encounter with and or as a result of learning disabilities. So you'll see bullying, special needs, self-esteem. Those are the kinds of things that are dealt with this little book. A look on what boys do. In this fun, affirming book that holds no restraints to traditional norms, we talk about what it means to be a boy. Readers will rejoice at all the possibilities. This one's out in November of 2021. These ones are all $22.50, less 46. So that's $12, $12.15 for you. You will pay freight on these as well, though, when you order them. And the last one here I just wanted to bring in was When Nana Dances, which talks about multi-generational families. Then, well, there's a couple more here. This one here is a very well illustrated book called As Babies Dream. So it's a bedtime book. And this one here is a feel better book for little sports. So clearly talking about little kids, youngsters, and their first adventures in dealing with competition in athletic endeavors. I'm going to jump into very quickly here a couple of Guilford products. This one here is called The Extraordinary Gift of Being Ordinary. So basically what it's all about is a theme that a lot of people in society are grappling with, and that's just about how to find happiness being who you are. So this book talks about and gives some ideas and strategies about how happiness may be just a state of mind and a matter of looking at your circumstances and finding the positive within them. Taking charge of adult ADHD. Russell Barkley is a famous authoritative author in this field, and this is another book that we expect will sell quite well. It's a second edition. We did very well with the first. It's coming out in October. Just back here to Extraordinary Gift of Being Ordinary, the personal happiness book. That's coming out in January of 2022. Taking Charge is $23.95, less 43. That's $13.65. And Finding Personal Happiness is $22.50, less 43. And also we got one here. I just thought I'd throw it in. It's helping your child overcome reading challenges. This is a pretty big deal. And a lot of kids, they're in schools. There's a lot of people around. It's a tough kind of a thing to talk about in front of peers and friends. So, some of it gets done, hopefully, at home. Parents can be a great source of support and education. So this book is a support written for that scenario. The next one I'm going to talk about, the next pub, this is Human Kinetics. And once again, as I say, there are book manager catalogs for all these pubs up on Book Manager right now. This one is one I'm going to try to buy. It's called Ageless Intensity. So it talks about how as you're getting older, you can still maintain some semblance of your youth, at least physically. And I have a good idea. It's all about doing very, very powerful exercises. So things like jumping, sprinting, lifting really quickly, those kinds of things. That's how you maintain power. Unfortunately, it takes a lot of energy, and you have to build up your aerobic system before you get into this. But nonetheless, some good themes in here, and something that's timely for a lot of us boomers who are aging. Release date August 1st, 2021. And the next one, we've got a couple books. This big and bold. There's one for plus-sized women that want to get into weight training, and there's also one for plus-sized women that want to have a little bit of direction on yoga. Okay, so they're called the Big and Bold Yoga for Plus-Sized Women, and both those books are $32.95 less $40. They're coming out in October. This guy over here, I brushed over it quickly. I didn't mention it. It's called Yoga for Runners. And I don't know if many of you know this, but when you run, what happens is you create a lot of muscle imbalances in your body that need to be stretched and strengthened. So that's addressed in this book as well. Just doing running as an exercise, you're going to end up with all kinds of problems in your knees, back, and hips, and they can usually be solved by stretching. Here's another one, interesting. This is from Taylor and Francis. This book, or Rutledge, some of you may know as. It's $33.95 less $44, called Couple Sexuality After 60. It's coming out in September of 21, and it's written by a few authorities in the area of human sexuality. Barry McCarthy, lead author, professor emeritus at American University with a diploma in clinical psychology and sex therapy. So that's one I think that will have appeal. And last but not least, as I realize my time is wrapping up, this is a book from Casemate, so it's going to be 46 off. You will pay shipping for this. And it's by a woman named Kate Gunn, who was a social drinker, like a lot of us are, and but she had an inkling that alcohol was holding her back from getting on top of her life. So when her partner decided to take a break, I think it was a Lent break actually, for those of you that understand things about Catholicism, he decided to take a break from alcohol for a month, and she decided to try it with him, and she never went back to drinking. So this is a story that chronicles her journey and talks about, I presume, the upside of living with alcohol and how enlightening it can be. So that'll be it for me. I just wanted to mention one thing further, and that was that if any of you have any suggestions about titles you want added to the Simon & Schuster initiative, I know Kim presented earlier today. If you have any products that you'd like us to add and or carry, certainly reach out to me and I'll take care of that for you. And I hope you have a good rest of the week with the presentations from other publishers. Thank you very much.